How to clean and paint rusty metal parts. This can work in multiple scenarios. You can see I'm showing a number of things that I did to get these parts back into service. So it actually worked quite nicely. I used a number of different techniques. A multi-tool works very nicely because it can get those hard to reach places. And this is my main engine mounting bracket that mounts my engine to my frame on my motorcycle. If you're following along, this is a 42-year-old motorcycle that's built up quite a lot of rust in certain areas. And what we're doing here is using a number of sandpaper grits to actually sand it. So the main thing here, number one, is make sure the parts are clean. You've got a number of different shapes, so you can use different types of drills to help you. I use a cordless drill with a brass bit for the actual engine guard, which is like a round stainless steel chrome finished bar. I've got my exhaust bars as well that need cleaning, the headers from the exhaust. I'm using a brass wheel and having this removable. So what I mean by that is I've got it off and I'm using it to get the hard to reach places. Then I actually desk mount my cordless drill and use that as like an angle grinder type situation with the brass bit. This gets it and makes light work of much of the work that we had to do. So actually get rust taken off the parts, got it to a nice smooth finish, and used it on obviously the exhaust pipes and on the bigger, longer sections. So as I got through this, it was very satisfying seeing the silver chrome finish coming back from the actual exhaust, for example. That was number one. I used a bit of, you can use WD-40, I used GT85 just to keep it going, and some steel wool to clean along on the actual exhaust headers. So I'm surprised that I was able to bring these back because they were quite bad condition. I should have done a before and after photo for you, but as I'm doing this project, I'm making videos along the way, and this is like a multi-project bike where I'm getting it back on the road. A 42-year-old Honda CB250. I think it's going to be pretty cool when we get it back on the road and do some riding on it and show you a few tricks of how to ride a motorcycle. Basically, that's the goal with this, and at some point plan to give the motorcycle away as well. So I haven't decided how that's going to work yet, but keep tuned for that, see how that plans out. So here's the main engine bracket. You'll see I use the sandpaper and I also use the wire wool to give it a good clean. So this is mainly getting the main bits off. And the main situation here is you want to have an area where you've got good air circulation. I also used sandpaper to give it a nice smooth finish for the paint to go on. I'll talk a bit more about the paint as we get these parts cleaned up, because the main thing here is that all the foot pegs were actually rusted under the rubber covers. So the main thing we're looking to do here is make sure we get a nice sound surface to work off. And the sandpaper grits, I used 400 and worked my way up. I cleaned out the rubber covers for the pegs, and then we used rust paint. So what that means is you can apply directly to rust. We took a lot of the rust away, but there was little elements of it which still showed there, which even sanding you wouldn't get out. It's like a bit of staining. So I used this paint to get us hammerite, and I went for the satin finish. I didn't really want a gloss on there, and it's straight to rust paint. I did have to give 2 or 3 coats. In the end, I gave 3 coats. This is because a lot of these things, when I sanded them back, I sanded them back to bare metal, and you don't need any primer or anything fancy. You can actually go straight into the paint and start giving it coats. So I did it over a few days. I gave it a coat, thin coat, let it dry. Next day I gave it another coat, and then the same day after an hour or so I gave it another coat, and I was very pleased with how they turned out. It'll give us a lot more service now, so when they're on the motorcycle they won't look as bad as they did before with the rust on them. And we gave it a nice clean coat of the paint. I used it and made it in a way that it actually applied without bubbles. It got a nice smooth finish to it, and I got all the little parts. So you can see there I've got the 2 rear passenger foot pegs. I took them apart. I've got the front main foot pegs, and then all the engine mounting brackets as well. So it's a nice little weekend project. You can take all your pegs off, or if you have any rusty bits on your motorcycle, get them off, have a good look at them, see what condition they're in, sand them down, use some wire brushes. If you've got a drill, if you've got a cordless drill, just get one of those attachments, and that works very nicely. If you don't, you can actually use sandpaper if you wanted to and use a wire brush on there yourself. So it doesn't have to be as fancy as what I've done here. I just tried a few different methods to see what works really well for me, because there's quite a lot of cleaning that needed to happen on this motorcycle. The exhaust headers, the pegs, the little extra things that needed working on, like for example the engine as well needed polishing and working on. So you'll see more videos about this as I get through it, but we're quite far on this project now. I'm also stripping down the frame. So that's going to be an exciting one. Stripping the frame down and then painting the frame and looking through how that turns out. You can see slowly the progression here. This is like day 2 where we had one coat done and then we worked on a second coat, and I'll show you the end, how it looked in the end. And it's very satisfying to see something that was kind of really rusty and looked bad coming to a point where it looks almost brand new. And these items, a lot of these are available for older bikes, but if you have a bike that's really old, you will most likely have to repair what you've got, because it can be difficult in getting these parts for different motorcycles. So remember, this is a 1972 motorcycle, Honda CB250, known as a Super Dream, also the Nighthawk in America they call it. And as usual, we've got Max keeping an eye on us and helping us along the journey. You'll see the end progress of this as we went through this. And what I've got here is the pegs. I've worked with the multiple coats. As long as you've got a good surface and it's dust free and you've got rid of all the rust, it actually works quite nicely. I used a mold grip to hold it in place as we were painting it, and that helped make it easy to hold. So working through these, we've got all the parts nice and clean. We gave them a good coat, and as they dried up, they actually gave a nice satin hard finish. So I'm happy that these can go back on the motorcycle looking a lot better than what they were. I put the rubbers back on and then started hinging them back together to get them ready, so when we move on to the motorcycle frame, which will be the next element where we're going to sand that down and then start painting that frame. If you're enjoying this series, make sure to subscribe so you actually get notifications directly to your phone each time I load a new episode. I've got loads of videos planned for this bike when we get it back on the road, so it'd be good to have you along on the journey with me. Take care, and I'll see you on the next video right here.